bit about that. One thing I do want to say about the Stansberry text, especially since many of you have most of your education in what I would say either in Ayurveda or other holistic health courses and programs in schools, that reading more scientific data on herbs might just feel a bit intimidating or a bit unusual or different from your style of learning. And so I want to speak to that a little bit. How do I and other people on Joyful Billy staff and your teachers read through scientific articles? Well, the first thing that none of us do and is memorizing hundreds of new chemicals, right? I never read the Stansberry text and then just be like, what is 5-alpha reductase, and then like study its molecular structure or even try to memorize what 5-alpha reductase is. Now, I happen to know what 5-alpha reductase is because I saw it repeated a bunch of times and slowly I did learn what it was, right? But that's not our goal, especially in a biocharacteristics medical theory course like Ayurveda or Chinese medicine or Greek medicine. We're not like, our goal is not to learn all of the different biochemicals, but we need to know enough of them so that we can delve into it when we have a client case or things like that, right? So that's the way I look at scientific, this sort of scientific molecules and biochemistry, is I look at it, but like I don't think like, oh, I better know this, I'm going to be tested on it. Now, you may be tested on a few biochemicals, but it's going to be the biochemicals that you see over and over again throughout the course. Like, you'll probably see the word testosterone and estrogen multiple times in the course. And so we're going to feel totally confident to give you a quiz question on testosterone, but we're not going to quiz you on 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to DHT, right? And DHT is this sort of, but okay, but what do we want to know about that, right? Because it's not like we're just ignoring that information, but we're also just not trying to memorize hundreds of chemicals, right? So what do we do with that information, and how do we approach scientific articles? Because I'm going to say, like, from here on out in the course and for the rest of your clinical life, you're going to spend a good 15 to 20% of your time on Google Scholar, right? Scholar.google.com, researching scholarly articles. That's what we all do. All clinicians that I know of do that. So we've got to learn how to read that kind of data and information and use it even in holistic biocharacteristics, energetic, however way you want to call it, medical approaches. So yeah, so first thing I'll say is I don't memorize it. Second thing is, if I see the same chemical, 3 or 4 different times, then I might memorize it, right? I try to say each one out loud once. Like, if you've never said the word 5-alpha reductase before, if you just read it, I would say it out loud to yourself, just because, it creates a placeholder in your brain for it, so you can start to absorb it, right? So even just the whole sentence, 5-alpha reductase converts testosterone to DHT. You can say that once to yourself, right? And it's not like a huge, invasion on your brain. So, okay. So what do I want to get? I want to understand concepts and patterns, because that's what biocharacteristics medicine is. So I want to know, what is testosterone like, and what is DHT like? That's the question that I'm interested in, right? That's the real question. What is testosterone like? What is DHT like? Now, you probably have some idea of what testosterone is like, but really, the testosterone that gets used for male secondary sex characteristics is because testosterone gets converted into DHT. So everyone always talks about testosterone, but what happens in the body is that 5-alpha reductase converts it into DHT, and DHT is the thing that strongly stimulates male secondary sex characteristics, like enlargement of the prostate, the development of the genitalia, male genitalia, and just all that kind of stuff, right? Building of the muscles, all that. So that's DHT that's doing a lot of that work. So, so we want to know that, oh, okay, testosterone is androgenic like DHT, but DHT is a stronger version of testosterone. So that kind of thing is very biocharacteristic like, right? DHT is a stronger version of testosterone and it has androgen like properties. That's a kind of simple sentence that boils it all down and kind of gets us out of the chemistry and into something we can visualize. All right. So, so that's really important. And students who have taken our AHC course know that one of the most important ways to understand anatomy, physiology that can sort of fast track you to a great deal of comfort is through uh, imagining the physiology. How's my sound quality, by the way? I just saw a message from Zoom that my internet connection was a little bit unstable.
You sound good here.
I sound good. Okay, great.
It
Great.
sounds
And I
good,
saw that
dear.
David
Thank you.
Matthews, you needed some help with attendance. I confirmed your attendance.
A little patchy, just a couple of times.
Yeah. Okay. A little patchy a couple of times. Okay, good. Well, hopefully the text here, if you're reading it, can help cover for me. Okay. So yeah, so I want to understand the concepts and the pattern. DHT is a stronger version of testosterone. And then I always imagine it too, right? It's really important to imagine it. So imagine the prostate gland located just beneath the bladder in men with the urethra going through it for elimination out of the penis. So you imagine the prostate and you imagine some testosterone floating in there, and then alpha reductase is this enzyme, that comes up, grabs it, and splits it and converts it, or whatever the heck it does, into DHT, and then DHT gets absorbed by the prostate, and then imagine the prostate growing. Okay, you can just close your eyes and imagine that. And once you imagine it, it's super hard to forget it. So, so I am going to suggest that anytime you're confronted, and I'm going to say the word confronted because it's like this stuff makes you dizzy, right? If it makes me dizzy, it makes you dizzy, probably too. Maybe you're the type of person that doesn't make it dizzy. If it doesn't make you dizzy, then please, reach out to us. We need, we need you, right? But if you're the kind of person that this stuff makes you a little dizzy, then close your eyes, imagine the physiology, and it'll just like poof, be a lot less mysterious. Okay, so generally I'll look up where things are produced. Now I didn't look up where 5-alpha reductase is produced. That I didn't produce, but I did look up where DHT was produced and testosterone. And mainly I looked up where DHT is produced after reading the chapter in Stansberry on the prostate, because that's going to come up a lot later. It doesn't really so much come up in endocrine, but when you're reading about reproductive herbs, you will come up with it. You will bump up against that term again and again. So you'll be like, okay, I need to know what DHT is, right? Okay. So yeah, so you look up where it's produced: reproductive tract, testes, ovaries, skin, seminal vesicles, prostate, epididymis, and many organs, right? And then you can imagine the same sort of action happening in those if you wanted, right? And then I notice effect on doshas, tissues, and biocharacteristics. Remember that the 5-alpha reductase converted the testosterone into DHT. I imagine the prostate growing. So that's really pointing out to effects on the doshas, right? This is an anabolic molecule, and it's going to cause growth. So it's kapha, but testosterone also increases pitta and reduces vata. So vata pacifying, pitta kapha aggravating. What are its biocharacteristics? Is probably hot, right? It's probably oily, hot and oily, right? Because it increases kapha pitta. All right. In any case, you're not expected to memorize hundreds of chemicals. I kind of just float over some of the chemistry at times, and I do read it, but I don't like hang on it too much. I don't, get nervous that I don't know it. And I know for you detail-oriented students out there, that's like anxiety provoking to not have all the details. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe, as health and wellness folks in holistic medicine, we're comfortable with focusing on concepts, patterns, and relationships as opposed to, reductionist analysis. But you should you're gonna touch down and dive down deep into some of these chemicals, but not others. And we'll leave it to, in a way, almost to your instincts and how far you want to go with that. But I'm just going to say that sometimes I'll float over a bit of the chemical stuff, or I'll read it once and say the names out loud, and just kind of be satisfied with not knowing some of them. And then you know and then if we're not expected to dive deep into them, like, why are they even there in the textbook, right? Like, why would we even assign you a book with that in there? And I'm going to say this: the scientific chemicals, the biochemistry is really important when you're doing research. It's not like this is not the last time you're going to open to the endocrinology chapter, but you're probably going to open to the endocrinology chapter like 3 weeks from now when you're sitting with a client and you realize they have an endocrine issue, and you're like, okay, I learned this a few weeks ago, but now I need to apply it, right? Because many of you are seeing clients, you're already certified in Ayurveda or other areas. And so you're just going to turn to the chapter and you're going to look it up, and you're like, I do need to know more about that specific chemical for this particular client, because I want to know exactly which of these two herbs is the best. And then you're gonna be super happy in that moment that Stansberry included the biochemistry. But for the purpose of us going through an overview of endocrine herbs, and you may not need the biochemistry yet, right? So just be glad it's there. Do some visualizations when you feel like it's important. Use the information as a springboard for deeper inquiry and research when you need it. And I'm just going to again say, don't be afraid to search scholar.google.com. The first 20 scholarly articles that you read you may end up spending like 10 minutes per article. But after a while, it just takes only a few minutes. Like when I was looking up glucocorticoid effect on thyroids for one of your quiz questions, I literally just went to Google Scholar and searched on glucocorticoid effect on thyroid, and pulled up that article. Now I don't know which one of these is that article now, but anyway, I ended up on this article here from PubMed, PubMed.nih.gov, right? And effective glucocorticoid pulse therapy on thyroid function and thyroid antibodies in children with Graves' disease. And I was like, okay, let's see if they reported any changes in thyroid hormones as a result of administering and injecting students with glucocorticoids, right? So I looked down, I found the results, right? I saw the background, methods, and results in the abstract. And right here at the bottom, it says no significant differences were observed in FT3, FT4, TSH, TPOB, TJAB. And I'm like, I'm guessing all of those are related to the thyroid. Let's just check to see how they're defined. And you look up here and you see, oh, FT3, FT4 is free, the free thyroid hormones. And TSH, we knew that one, but and then these AB ones are just antibodies. So they're checking for autoimmune antibodies in Graves' disease. So they did notice some antibodies. The TRAB was significantly lower. So some kind of antibodies, thyrotropin receptor antibodies were reduced, but otherwise the free T3, free T4, TSH didn't change at all due to glucocorticoids. And obviously it took me longer to say it than to read it. But if I was opening up this article, it would take me all of 45 seconds to find that information out, and then I jump right back to my quiz. Okay, so again, the first 15 articles you look at, you may spend 10 minutes instead of the 30 seconds like I did. But you need to develop the facility, right? If you're going to be a great clinician, you need to develop a facility with just jumping into those articles, reading it, finding the definition of whatever abbreviations they're using to make it simple for themselves, and penetrate the text and get what you need and just get back out of there, right? I didn't read the whole article. I didn't, spend 3 hours on it or anything like that. Okay. I'm just also going to say many of the questions in this course require further research. If you went through this quiz and you were just like looking for the information in the textbook, it probably took you longer to do this quiz than someone who can spend a few minutes on Google Scholar, right? So you read the chapter, you underline the stuff that that looks important and looks very interesting, and especially read the quiz questions before you read the chapter, so you know what information to look for and highlight. Put a little star next to anything that'll help you with the quiz question. Then go back and try to answer the quiz questions. And if the information, wasn't in the text, then you want to just get on Google Scholar, or you might have to noodle it a minute or two, because some of the questions do require deduction. We're not just asking you to regurgitate information you saw in the text. We want you to be good herb thinkers, right? We're trying to teach you how to learn and innovate in herbalism. Our job is not to teach you how to regurgitate, but how to penetrate, develop your own insights, and be good herbal, be the herbal chef, right? So we're not teaching you recipes. We're teaching you how to cook and how to be a designer, an architect. Okay, and that's our goal. So some of these, it's not just going to be, oh, look it up in the chapter, just so you know, about that. But I think that if you're not afraid to jump on scholar.google.com, or even just, on regular Google and Googling other Ayurvedic websites, checking on the Joyful Belly website, sometimes you look in the chapter, write out the answer as best you can, spend another 5 minutes Googling over the internet, and you'll have your info, and then you're going to move on from it. And I'm also going to say that many of the questions, like the compare and contrast questions especially, are designed for you, not for us, right? It's not like we want to know that you can compare and contrast. It's more like we want to know that when you have a client, that you can come up with a solid reasoning and basis for selecting one thyroid herb among many that's an exact fit to your client. So those compare contrast questions are your critical clinical questions that you're going to be needing whenever you're designing herb formulas for your clients. All right, good. So with that, I would just want to open the floor to some questions, because I covered about building a foundation and reading